Okay, everybody, there's a lot of information around about this, but nothing really specific that tells you exactly what you need to do, and it can be quite confusing. So what I really wanted to do, I was used to Ibanez's, and I liked changing the arms to something that was rock solid. I have zero tolerance for any play in an arm, and I guess as well, I don't mind it being nice and stiff so it doesn't always just drop down, but that's not such a big deal. I just don't want any play. I don't want any rattling. I want to touch it and I want to get response from the tremolo. So what did I do? Well, I didn't really like so much the factory arm that came with this Ibanez Edge tremolo. It's on a fairly new Prestige. So after reading lots and lots and buying parts on eBay and getting the wrong parts sent and generic parts that didn't fit, I finally ended up doing what lots of people do, which is switching to a Schaller German-made arm with the accompanying socket. Now on eBay and elsewhere you see things that are advertised as Schaller arms and they arrive without any packaging, and I would say they're probably not Schaller. The other confusing thing is, this is the original Ibanez arm, but I'll use it to demonstrate. There are some Schaller arms that arrive with not two like on this Ibanez arm, but one plastic bush in it. So just above the screw down part of the arm, it uses a plastic bush. I didn't want that either. I've bought Schaller arms in the past and they've had metal cross pins. So through the end of the arm here, you have a metal cross pin instead of a plastic bush that eventually is going to wear out. So again, lots of emailing and eBay questions. Is this a metal pin? Is it plastic? Finally, I found the right part. You've got to get it in a packet. You've got to say, I want a Schaller arm in a packet that comes with a socket. So it's a Schaller arm and socket together. There is the part number. Now I think I saw an Asian guy in Fast Forward doing this change on YouTube, and it looks like when I paused it, it was all parts or something like that. I couldn't get that here, but this Schaller one is perfect. I bought what was advertised as genuine Schaller. It turned out that the socket was too big, just too big to fit into this Ibanez Edge tremolo. I would have had to drill out and grind out the thread in the armhole, which I don't really want to do. So you've got to get this one in the packet to make sure this fits very snugly. There's no play, and you get really good, nice tight grip from the new socket. So anyway, then that YouTube video where the guy's in Fast Forward is pretty tricky because you kind of miss all of the bits that he's doing. I didn't find it easy to remove this socket from the Ibanez Edge original. I found it quite confusing, difficult to access. I paid $200 to get this Ibanez set up, so I wanted to replace the arm and its socket without pulling the bridge out, importantly, because that's a whole other headache, and this can be done. The way that you do it, you need to get a specific tool. Now, I didn't have the tool, so I went to a hardware store and borrowed the part I needed, because I'll never need to use it again, God willing. This is what your Ibanez Edge socket looks like. It's got this little unusual spring part down here that I think's the stopper for the bottom of the arm, with a screw holding that into this socket chassis, and the underside has a nut which is 10 millimeters. You'll find that on internet, but you won't really find out how to get it off. Sometimes there's a bit of thread lock on this. Now on the top of it, the tremolo, you'll see this is what the arm goes into. like so. You will see this bit, and I wasn't quite sure what to do with this. Anyway, you need a fairly large, once you've taken the arm out, a fairly large screwdriver, flathead screwdriver. And it needs to be fairly thick too. It fits snugly in to the two little ridges on the side of this, like so. Now you need to keep tension on that from the top, as from underneath you use what is called, I believe, a 10mm long shaft socket. Now you don't want the big, I think it's a 1/2 inch socket part, because it won't fit inside between the trem block and the side of the guitar. If you get a part like that, you need to pull the tremolo out. So you want, I think it's called a 1/4 inch long shaft 10mm socket. That connects to these tiny little socket parts instead of, you know, your bigger headed sort of mechanic style. I think maybe it's a 1/2 inch. Anyway, this is a 1/4 inch, so you want a 1/4 inch 10mm long shaft socket. You connect that socket onto here. I don't have it anymore because I took it back. You reach down from the back of the guitar. You use this from the back side, unscrewing the nut, whilst on the top side you use the flathead screwdriver to keep tension on the top of the socket to stop it just spinning round. If you don't use this on the top, you will just probably spin it round and round in circles and get nowhere. You need to keep the tension on the top with the screwdriver whilst using that long shaft 10mm 1/4 inch socket to get the bottom nut off. Now once you get the bottom nut off, then it's threaded as well. So it's confusing then. You're thinking, well, hang on, what do I do now? Well, what you need to do then is simply unscrew the socket using the the flathead screwdriver from the top of the tremolo block, and it just screws out of the block. Sometimes it's quite stiff, it can be in there, and you're thinking you might break something. You just keep turning it anti-clockwise and it will come out. And the thing I found is when you're undoing from the bottom end and then the top end, they, from memory, they sort of work against each other. So you're tightening one in as you're taking the other one out. I can't remember, but eventually you'll get this off. Success. And that's a good feeling, because I never again, if it becomes loose in there, want to be going in there with this long shaft socket. It's just not very practical. And I haven't used the Magic Arm, M-A-G-I-K. You will see that advertised, and I'm sure it's an amazing product. I don't know that much about these tremolo blocks, but what I know is from looking at it, again, it's got a nut on the bottom as the way of tightening the socket in. I just don't like that style. Once I switched to Schaller and I could just shove an Allen key in the back and tighten it up, if it came loose, I couldn't really go back. You've always got Allen keys lying around. You don't need a really super specific part. So the Schaller arm is a really simple installation. The only thing I will say is that it comes with 2 screws. They're quite small. They're bigger than the Allen head screws you'd find on a bike when you're attaching like a bike carrier. They're thinner than that, smaller gauge. Now you get 2 sizes in the pack. You get a short one, which was in the socket itself when it arrived, and you also get a slightly longer one. Plus you also get a washer. Now I found in this Ibanez Edge tremolo block, the thickness of the block means that you can't really use the washer because you won't have enough length thread to get a really good, connection. So you've got to use the long screw for starters, So I took the short one out, took the washer out. You don't really need the washer. It'd be nice to have it in there, but the head is big enough. And then with that longer screw, you get a decent amount of kind of, what would you call it? Screw into the socket. So yeah, it's really kind of that simple. On the back side, you've got the Allen's head screw that you can see just down there. I've actually put a Killer Guitar Components big brass block thing in this, which is kind of cool. And behind the springs, I've got some foam to try and stop a bit of the vibration from the springs. If the tremolo arm is kind of, if I strike it like a diving board, I don't want those springs to just keep buzzing and vibrating. So that's really easy. That's that new Schaller socket down in there in black. What I used to tighten that was just simply an Allen key. The way I got some decent leverage on that Allen key, if you can get a handle, like an Allen key handle, this one's a bit big for this Allen key, but I'm sure you could get one that fits really well, and pop it in here so you can get really nice kind of purchase on that turn and get it really nice and tight. The Ibanez tool is probably okay, but you don't get the same sort of purchase because it's just a twisty thing like this. You could maybe turn it down like that and use the Ibanez tool as well, but just with the cluster I don't find it as strong. You really want to get it nice and tight, I find, and then, or you can use thread lock, but I prefer just to get it nice and tight. Now I found when tightening it, again you'll get the top turning around on the spot. So like with the flathead screwdriver in the Ibanez Edge tremolo, you want to have something on the top side stopping it, the movement. I like to use an old piece of rubber from a rubber glove, and that really improves your gripping purchase on something. And I just, once I've put the Schaller arm in, I twist, I tighten it up with the top lock, which is on the arm, and then I use the rubber glove to hold on to just that part. There's no, like with the Ibanez, with the groove to use the screwdriver, there's nothing like that on the Schaller, so you're left to basically holding it, but it works pretty well. You just need to hold it well with like a rubber glove, and then on the back crank it nice and hard, crank that Allen key with an Allen key tool. The last thing I found, it was slightly, there was a little bit of wiggle in the arm still, so I put probably about 3 rounds of plumber's tape onto the bottom of the arm where it goes into the socket, and then as to put it in, it was really tight, so to put it in I twisted the arm round in circles, going the right way to not unravel the plumber's tape. So kept twisting, probably took a good 6 or 7 turns of the arm with pretty decent downward pressure as I twisted, and you want it to be that hard to get in because that's meaning it's really nice and snug in there. And now after doing all of that and then tightening it up nice and tight again, this bit, the arm screw down component that's not on the Ibanez tremolo, I've got incredible, there's no play in this. It's very stiff from the plumber's tape, but not too stiff. I've got the Schaller arm, the way this has been set up for me, the Schaller arm goes down, bottoms out about, it's hard to show, sorry, about there. So close enough to the strings that I can play and kind of hold it in my arm in a way that I like to. but not so close that, you know, you're hitting the strings. I found the Ibanez Edge arm itself stuck up far too high. I sort of tried to bend it down a bit like I've done with other tremolos. It didn't work so well. It's very strong steel. It's very high quality. And look, some people love these, and I'm sure they're great as well. I was just a bit... I didn't really want to deal with the plastic parts. I wanted something that was all metal. So as long as you get the Schaller arm with the metal pin through it, you won't have any plastic to replace. And yeah, you'll end up with an Ibanez with an arm that's pretty much bulletproof. And if it does loosen, really easy to tighten on the fly just with an Allen key that you can find anywhere at a pub or wherever you're doing a gig or wherever you're playing. So sorry it's been a very long explanation, but a lot of variables there. Make sure if you're buying a Schaller arm, request this exact part, which is an arm and socket combination, and all the best with your swap. And thank you so much for listening. Ciao.